Well, here's a question then. You said before it feels like we've got sort of brain damage and the right as a society.
Yeah, I'm talking very loosely.
Yes, exactly. So then I wonder, what has happened? Is it that we have created a society that incentivizes... I mean, if I think about this YouTube, I'm incentivized to have binary thinking and to make the title something sensationalist, and I hope people will click and listen and see it's not actually that sensationalist.
Yes.
And it will do well. And I think there are all different parts of life now where we are incentivized, all social media. So is that what's happening?
Well, yes. I mean, I think I mentioned that I've seen a certain pattern in Western civilization where there is a sudden, it's not a gradual, it usually happens very quickly. There's a sudden efflorescence of what the best of the left and the right, when they work together, can produce. And by the way, left is not science and right the humanities. Left and right are important for science, and left and right are important for humanities. But what you get is, as at the 6th century BC in Greece, or again around the year dot in Rome and in the Renaissance, a burgeoning of everything, you know, of mathematics, of cosmology, of music, of drama, of lawmaking, of all the things that make a society civilized. And these then produce stability for a few hundred years. And then after a while, the thing degrades always by shifting more towards the left hemisphere's point of view. And I think this is due to many things, but one is due to a civilization overreaching itself, either territorially or commercially or whatever, so that it has to administer on a huge scale. And this automatically makes things crude. They have to be simple paradigms that can be rolled out, as we say, anywhere in the world, whatever the culture there is. And the individual is lost, the life in it is lost. It becomes steeply hierarchical, it becomes very doctrinal and dogmatic. And you can see this in the art. As the civilization declines, it becomes more stereotypical, less empathic towards its image figures and so forth, more hierarchical. So that is a pattern, and I think it happens because we overreach ourselves. But there are a few other things. I mean, one is that it's money for old rope to put across the left hemisphere's point of view, because it's so darn simple. It's just that there are bits, and we put them together and they make something, which is how you make a machine. But in the vastness of the universe, there is almost nothing at all that is at all like a machine. There's just the few machines we have made that are like machines. Nothing else is. Not only is life not like machines for 8 or 10 reasons I could give you, but it's not that the inanimate world behaves like machinery either. We now know, indeed, that physics doesn't obey those Newtonian mechanics. And we've known that for at least 100 years. So we need to break out of this mindset, and it's partly that, I think, that is pushing it. And it's this business that I mentioned that Whitehead said that once you start analysing yourself, it makes everything very crude, because the answers to these questions have to be derived from public discourse such as we're having now, and in which if I say, well, on the one hand and on the other, which would be very reasonable, I appear to be either contradicting myself or have nothing important to say, whereas actually that's truthful. And as I say, we've lost the skill to listen to things that speak to us implicitly. Even the arts now have to speak explicitly. So when you go to an art gallery, you look at a painting of the 15th century, and you only need to see the painting. There's things that an art historian can draw your attention to and so on. If you go to a modern art gallery, there'll be a text by the artist saying what he had in mind or she had in mind when they made the picture or the installation or whatever it is. The same thing with music. You know, what the composer, before it's given its first performance, what I was trying to achieve was. Bach never said that, and didn't need to, because we only have to listen to it. So things that speak to us intuitively speak to us profoundly. When they're reduced to the superficial level of everyday language, you're reduced to the language of everyday use for a dishwasher manual. And as Nietzsche said, words make the uncommon common.
Wow. And Roland Barthes' The Death of the Author seems to no longer apply, because the author's getting a bit involved, isn't it?
Well, I think the trouble with that is that it's dehumanizing the utterance, because these things are utterances of people. And the idea that they're not is I think I would identify that with the general move to dehumanize the humanities, actually.
I see. But with everything that you've said, and based on previous civilizations then, are we heading for collapse?
Well, I think we might be, yes. In a way, these are natural cycles. We shouldn't expect a civilization to go on forever.
No.
There's a wonderful little book called Immoderate Greatness, and the author, it's only about 80 pages long without the notes. It's a model of lucidity, and it's a wonderful afternoon to read. I do recommend it. The author is called Offals, and I can never remember whether it's Patrick or William. One is his real name, and the other is his pseudonym.
Oh.
But anyway.
A lot of use that was the pseudonym, was now as
Yes. I want to say to him, if you wanted to hide, it was Offals that needed to go, not Patrick or William. But anyway, there it is. And he basically says there are 6 reasons why civilizations collapse, and 3 of them are to do with external constraints like the environment and the damage that's done and exhausting resources and so on. But the other 3 are to do with the cast of mind, and that's much closer to mine, although he doesn't talk about hemispheres, of course, but because he wrote before I'd written. But one of the points he makes, which I think is very good, is that in the beginning of a civilization, people are very self-denying. They risk their lives to build something. They often have to fight to keep off people. They build something strong and secure, and they devote themselves to that. The next generation comes along, and they're able to build on that, what we think of as civilization. You know, the arts, civil discourse, philosophy, all these things. Wonderful. But after a while, after perhaps a couple of 300 years, people no longer see the connection between what they do and think and the existence of that civilization. They become entitled. They think they're entitled to what, it's my right to have this, that, and the other. Well, actually, where does that right come from? It's actually something which should come from the reciprocal relationship between you and a community, you and a society. The society helped form you, who you are, and give to you, and you must give back to them and help further the goodness of that society. Whereas now we have this atomistic thing where it's each of us against everyone else to grab as much as we can, the left hemisphere spirit, and also I can be anything I like, which was never true and never will be true.
Yeah, so entitlement. I've got one more question for you, but first tell us where people can go and find your work and those things.
Well, I have a website called Channel McGilchrist, which some people think is an imperative, but it's just a description. And
I'd love to channel some McGilchrist. I think that sounds great. Yeah.
And on it, you'll find a lot of, most of it is open to anyone. You don't have to pay. And there's a lot of my stuff there, many, many, many clips and some papers and things like that.